civilian tourism into the sex industry because it's taboo. Like, they're just going to put on, a sex worker outfit and try it on for the day. And then they get to take it off and they don't get to experience any of the stigma and long-term discrimination that we face. Fuck them.
This is a Now Magazine podcast.
So thank you all of you for being here for yet another Now What podcast. This is, of course, our cover story for our Valentine's Day issue, our infamous Love and Sex issue that comes out every year. And this year, it's been about a year since this pandemic got going. And of course, everyone got hit. But I feel like, people who work in the sex working industry, especially, because you don't have the sort of support that everyone else can rely on from the government and such. So to discuss the effect of the pandemic, but more specifically the transition that a lot of sex workers has made to online work, and discuss how the kind of different social dynamics and issues that arise from that, we brought together a panelist of people who work in and around the sex work industry. So I'm going to actually ask you all to introduce yourselves. So let's begin with Andrea Werhan, who I counted on to help me put this together because I would be up shit's creek if I didn't, on my own. And of course, you are the last person I saw, one of the last people I saw before this pandemic took over. We were in a photo shoot when we found out the world was collapsing. So go ahead, tell us about yourself, Andrea.
Well, thanks, Red. So I'm Andrea Werhan. I'm a former full-service escort. I'm an unemployed stripper, thanks to the pandemic, and I'm a current online sex worker, and doing a bunch of other kind of gray area sex work, creative work. I'm also the author of a book called Modern Whore, a memoir, which is a sex work memoir that I wrote. So yeah, that's me. And I go by she and her.
And there's also a film.
Yeah, there's two films. There's the short film, Modern Whore, which got accepted into South by Southwest, which is the occasion in which we met. And we're doing a photo shoot for now for when we found out mid-photo shoot that South by Southwest had been canceled. And I continued on with the photo shoot. So there's that. And then we recently released through the CBC Creative Relief Fund a sweet little short film, a short doc called Last Night at the Strip Club, about my last couple shifts over at the old strip club. It's pretty self-explanatory.
And it's great. Both films were really fun. So
thank you.
Am I allowed to call them fun?
100%. Yeah.
I mean, that's it, Andrea. So we'll go in order of how I'm seeing you all on my screen. So Gwen Adora, tell us about yourself.
Hi, my name is Gwen Adora, your big milky mommy GF. I am a online porn clip creator and I guess adult influencer type person, adult industry creator, I guess. A lot of those words together. That's who I am. I've been in the industry for, just over 3 years now. And it's been very interesting to see how the world has changed, especially within the pandemic and surrounding OnlyFans. So I'm super excited to talk about that today.
Perfect. Eliza Lord. Do I call you Eliza or Elizabeth?
Either's fine.
Okay.
My name's Eliza. My pronouns are she and they. I am a full service sex worker. I started working at agencies, then worked with one collective, and then moved on to be independent. And then the pandemic happened. I'm also on OnlyFans, and I am a multidisciplinary artist, working mostly in live performance and writing lots of poetry. And I am a co-host for a podcast called Tart with a Heart, where we talk about media through a sex worker lens.
Oh, I'm not muted. Yes, thank you. Thank you for that. And Kathy, sorry, shit, I'm gonna delete that part.
No. Kathy's fine. Kathy's fine. My name is out there. It's cool. Let's go. Yeah. I have been a sex worker since I was 18 years old. So we're gonna go for about 12 years now. So I've been a full service sex worker. And then I moved on to online sex work. And I've probably been a online like webcam girl since I was for the last, maybe last like 8 years. And with OnlyFans as a new thing. So I guess I'm now like an adult content creator, but I've always been a webcam girl. And I guess the last part would be content creator and OnlyFans.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm going to ask. I'm already jumping at wanting to ask everyone questions, but let's introduce everyone first. Anna Valens. Is it Valens or Valens?
Valens, but everyone has that question, so you're good. Hi, my name is Anna. I wear many hats. I write about sex work and adult content for the Daily Dot. I am an online sex worker, more specifically a trans online sex worker. I run an OnlyFans. I have a ManyVids. I basically kind of split my time between shooting and doing kind of like photo sets, vids for my fans. I'm also an adult content creator, and I would say folk know me best for a mixture of like my watchdog work for sex workers' rights. I like to report a lot on either targets, basically like campaigns targeting sex workers or campaigns targeting adult content creators on social media, and also for the advocacy that I do for my own community and the organizing and stuff as well. So I wear many hats, and it's great to be here.
Thank you all for being here. And then finally, Ellie Attiker.
Hi, everyone. My name's Ellie, she, her, hers pronouns. My background's in dancing, but I work with a group in the city called Maggie's Toronto, which is one of Canada's oldest by and for sex worker projects. And earlier this year, when the pandemic hit, we started this queer black strip club called the Strap House that I'm really excited about. And I think a lot of my work is really about like mutual aid and like emergency funds and food to people impacted by the pandemic, but also really focusing on like the impact of COVID on Black sex workers, because I think that we experience a lot of anti-Blackness within the industry. And so trying to like fight for some of that space in strip clubs and parlors and in other spaces can be quite difficult. Thank you for inviting me to this. I really appreciate it.
I was muted. Sorry. Thank you all for being here. Now, just a reminder that don't wait for me to ask you a question. Don't wait for me to call on you. You all are in charge of this conversation. I will throw out the first question. I'll just say like what what made us kind of want to do this is I just saw a comment on Twitter. The comment, and maybe it's a comment that keeps coming up. It's like someone compared they're like, they compared PornHub to Amazon, and if you want to support local, you go to OnlyFans or you subscribe to your local talent. And I'm just wondering, so to start us off, like how much of that does that analogy hold true? Is that how this industry works?
Yeah, I think it's important for people to pay for their porn. We have such a culture that's porn obsessed, but has no relationship with the people who produce that porn. And now, I think in the pandemic, it's really been highlighted how many porn performers can just demand to be paid for their service, demand to be paid for the content that they're creating. That is really like keeping everybody sane during this pandemic. I think sex workers are the unsung heroes of this pandemic and have been keeping people alive, people happy and productive. So yeah, it's really important for people to pay for their porn. I can see the local versus big box analogy. Yes, it would. It's kind of complicated, and I would love to hear from the people, from Gwen on this about Pornhub as like a big box store, even though now like everyone that's got content on there is verified, and prior to the whole Visa, MasterCard scandal. People were making money off of stealing other people's videos. So it's sort of like if Amazon on top, or like if it was a big box store and everything inside of that big box store was stolen. So yeah, I don't know if Gwen, you want to say anything about that.
And Gwen, can you also give us some background on what Andrea is referring to in terms of the Visa, MasterCard the scandal, in case people aren't aware?
Sure, yeah. So Pornhub is a tube site primarily, or originally, I guess, not primarily anymore, but and a tube site is historically a website, and there's many of them online where people can upload whatever porn video, and it's like anybody can upload it. Often it's stolen from originally at the beginning of online porn. It was like videos from big production companies that people would strip down and like re-upload so that other people could get them without having to pay for them. So like the origins of PornHub is like not paying for porn. Stop complimenting each other in the comments. You're making me blush.
There's a side chat going on here. We're talking about how pretty they look.
I'm going to turn it off. Okay. So I can focus on this is a serious topic. So yeah, Pornhub originally was people uploading stolen content. But over the past couple of years, specifically, the site has kind of changed its ways because models could they open up a model program where people could make money off of their content that was stolen. They could claim videos that were uploaded from them as small creators and take them back and actually gain like the ad revenue that was like taken off those videos, which I think is fabulous because it's like, if your video is going to be stolen, I'd rather get the ad revenue back afterwards. And then they kind of expanded that to do a clip store as well, which is called Model Hub, and some other like avenues of like a verified model program. Similar to what like other pay to view porn sites have, except with Pornhub, you could also monetize the free views as well with an AdSense program, kind of like YouTube has, which is pretty sweet. And I think like comparatively to other tube sites out there, I think it's like one of the most like, I guess, like competitive and like best ones. Also Pornhub is a big brand name. So if like people are if they have to watch free porn, I'd rather be getting a view sense off of it, in my opinion. I know not all like sex workers feel that way, but for me, it's like a really good way for marketing. So, and then this past, like, I mean, like they're still on the site. On the site, there still existed free videos that were uploaded illegally of like content that wasn't like, didn't have consent to be there. So that included stuff from like anywhere from big production companies to like small independent creators, like cam girls who'd get their streams like recorded and uploaded, or people having their clip videos like bought and then like redistributed through that, because anybody could upload a video. So through that, so like unfortunately, any site where you could upload anything on the internet, much more illegal content, specifically like child sexual assault material in this case, was uploaded to like Pornhub and has been, and a bunch of the survivors were challenging Pornhub to get their stuff removed, had some issues with it, which I have issues with Pornhub's response to those people, because they definitely took way too long to handle the situation and take the videos down upon request. So that kind of steamrolled into a group called Exodus Cry, putting out a Pornhub or a campaign called Trafficking Hub, which branded Pornhub as like this like big human trafficking website, and that's like all the videos there were contributing to like increasing child sexual assault material on the internet, and that Pornhub was profiting off of these terrible videos, which there's some truth to that. But Exodus Cry, I'm talking a lot right now. It's a very, very complicated situation. Exodus Cry went like really hard with this campaign, which it made it look like the campaign they did for it was very flashy in terms of like they had like modern graphics, and they got like a whole audience of people on like TikTok who were like Gen Z people to be like, yes, of course I agree that child sexual assault material shouldn't be on Pornhub and shouldn't be anywhere, and companies should not be profiting off of that with like ad revenue. But then underneath that was this anti-porn push as well, and obviously to take the entire site down. And that rolled into a New York Times article by a neo-centralist journalist who underlying doesn't really like sex workers or porn at all. So that came out with this big article called The Children of PornHub, which really pushed the narrative that Pornhub was this big human trafficking website. And that led to Visa and MasterCard pulling out their services from the Pornhub platform. So that means, and specifically, you're like, where do you buy things with Visa and MasterCard on Pornhub? That's in the Model Hub section, which is where you can buy the consensual videos from performers that they've uploaded for you to purchase. So it doesn't affect any of the free videos that were roaming around on the website, but it does affect the paid videos that people were trying to get paid under, which doesn't make any sense. But, that's how people roll, is to make these decisions without really looking at the full consequences or the effects of them. And then after that, Pornhub decided, they scrambled together a plan and decided that only from now on verified creators are the only people who can upload on the platform, which is good. And we've been, as a performer, been pushing for that for a long time, and it's good to happen, but unfortunately under this kind of like a forced hand situation. And then Visa and MasterCard still didn't really care. And Pornhub is like slowly working to clear, they cleared a lot of like illegally uploaded videos, all the way from cam performers to child sexual assault material stuff to re-uploaded production house videos. So they've been working to do that and trying to get Visa and MasterCard to work with them again. And that's where we're at with that.
Can I just say, I did not know that I was going to get the full, that was very, very good. Thank you for that. The people who are listening should know in a concise way what's going on, and that was the shortest way. That was the shortest. Yeah. That was so detailed.
It's really complicated. It's really complicated.
Yeah. You wrote about this, right? Because I only understood that from Ellie's article, and Ellie wrote about how. The underlying kind of Christian drive behind it all. I'm wondering, do you all think that they paid more attention to Pornhub because of COVID? Their attention would have been elsewhere, but because the pandemic brought all the attention to the what's going on online, that's how it.
Okay. I just want to say that one of the big things is in terms of videos of sexual assault and child assault, Facebook is way more guilty. Facebook is actually the guiltiest of that. Pornhub only had they had cases, they had a few cases, but Facebook blew it out of the water. And you can still use Visa and fucking MasterCard on Facebook, just FYI, to buy ads and whatever. So it's obviously, it's 100% not about this, for the children. It's we don't like sex workers and we're going to take them down.
Yeah. It's an ideological war.
Yeah, Pornhub, because it has porn in the name, is of course the first target.
It's the symbol. Pornhub is the symbol of modern pornography.
Absolutely. If they could go after OnlyFans, they would. They aren't, because it's they're trying to build their way into that, right? MasterCard and Visa is a huge, huge, huge victory for the Exodus Cry folks, for the trafficking hub folks, because they're trying to build this precedent of attacking other sites too that don't really have this prior, history. Pornhub is already really, really a complicated and infamous subject among sex workers because of exactly the things that Gwen outlined, right? I remember maybe 3 years ago now writing this report about Pornhub being so controversial of sex workers because of all the pirated material, and how whenever you would confront them, even as a member of the press, they would either downplay it or they would try to silence you and try to shut you out of being able to report about them. They would go really, really aggressive, or they would try to gaslight you as a reporter. And there's a lot of problems with Pornhub and how it operates, and how it basically came into the adult content space, the porn space, and basically overturn the industry through that pirated model. So there's a lot of problems with Pornhub, but it is such a controversial website, and it does have that kind of relationship with, oh, this is the porn site. This is where everyone goes to. So yeah, absolutely. I definitely agree. It's a symbol, and it's a symbol that they're trying to use in order to wedge their way into other sites. They're trying to get people they're trying to get OnlyFans. They're trying to get ManyVids. They're trying to get Just for Fans to eventually attack their models. And I think among them, I think OnlyFans is actually more likely to be on the chopping block because it's run in a way where it's sort of like they hold their adult content creators at arm's length, even though it's got connections with, correct me if I'm wrong, but the MFC folks, My Free Cam.
I was just going to say the dude who owns MFC owns 51% of OnlyFans, and MFC, and between MFC and OnlyFans, I would say actually probably make more money than Pornhub. And I would love to see what kind of legal battle goes on there. Because
absolutely. Yeah, really good point. And it's exactly true. And it's really, really complicated. And I definitely, it's all about trying to attack payment processors, because the banks and the payment processors are the ones that control our ability to operate, and to also have bank accounts, which a lot of us are constantly afraid we're going to lose.
So a good friend of mine worked for a payment processor, and he's like, oh yeah, like nobody there takes adult services. Right? Like as a payment processor, like no companies really do. It's about it's the idea of starting a sex worker friendly company. The issue with that is we are so much of a liability with scamming and chargebacks that it's nearly impossible to have the capital to even start it.
Interesting. Well, can I clarify what MFC is?
Oh, my MFC is My Free Cams. It's so My Free Cams and Chatterbait are the two main webcam websites right now.
I also want to just expand really quickly too, regarding payment processors. A lot of times, especially for those of us that take on watchdog roles and like really try to keep an eye on what's going on, what's being censored, it can be really difficult to tell who's pulling the strings where and when. I've been reporting about Patreon increasingly clamping down on NSFW content. They initially tried to learn sex workers and act like they're sex worker friendly years ago, and then they booted out the sex workers, and now they're starting to clamp down adult artists who still make up a huge portion of Patreon users. And one of the first categories that they targeted a few years ago, I think this is going 2 years back now, summer 2019, they started targeting hypnosis-based content, which is often targeted by adult websites. ManyVids even has very strict guidelines about how you handle hypnosis content. It's supposed to be labeled like mesmerized or like, can I curse on this?
Yes.
Good. Or it's called like mindfuck content, right? Like it's actually hypnosis, but it's called mindfuck because otherwise they're going to have issues with their payment processors or the banks. But that's the problem too, is it's hard for us as watchdogs and sex workers and activists to actually understand, is it because a bank or a credit card company is deciding we're not allowing this kind of content? Is it because the payment processor is coming in? It's usually, in my opinion, it usually comes from all the way in the top and goes down. That's sort of what seems to be the case. I don't have as much like insider connections with that though. But it can be really complicated and difficult to explain why the censorship happens, because like it goes back to this core issue, especially for those of us in the United States, which is like freedom of speech is dictated by whether a credit card company or a bank is willing to work with the speech that you're putting out. And for sex workers, that usually means whatever services that they're doing are automatically discriminated against, and it's impossible to hold a payment processing account or even a bank account. And so we live with that every day. You know, I worry about getting my PayPal shut down for that reason. I worry about my Cash App getting shut down or suddenly losing all the money in my bank account, which is why I'm very, very, very picky about like, you know, who I give money to in the first place and what like institutions I work with. So it's super, super layered. And I think talking about the payment processor aspect is super important, because there's a reason why these organizations are targeting that. It's because that's really where a lot of the decisions are made for our free speech.
I have a question. Did any payment processors step up to replace MasterCard and Visa on Pornhub? Like, have people been able to get their money yet?
So what Pornhub has been doing is they basically like there's no way for anybody to purchase any content as of like it was like late December, I guess, when the decision happened. So there's no way anybody can buy anything. So like what Pornhub has been doing, which has been like really like, to be honest, I don't think a lot of other sites would do this, is they've been calculating like just to help models, because like obviously people rely on that money. To help models, they've been doing like calculating 50% of their average like income from the Model Hub portion of Pornhub specifically, and then paying that like for December and also January, I think.
But how are you getting those payments?
We're paid. The payout is fine. It's people purchasing the content. That's the issue.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wait, so are they giving you like a credit where it's like we're paying you out, but we'll be subtracting this for when people start buying stuff?
No, they're fronting the money, like just like out of like their own like.
Oh, they're literally being like, here's your stimulus check.
Yeah, essentially, yeah. They're
okay,
like,
I haven't read anything about that. That's really fascinating.
Yeah. Which is like really nice, to be honest. I don't know if a lot of other sites would pull money out of their own pocket to be like, hey, we realize that we like rely on you, and so we want to make sure that you're paid. Which is it's very nice.
Sorry, to clarify, people aren't able to buy content, so Pornhub is paying people what they would have gotten.
Yeah, half of what they would have gotten. Yeah, of their average like earnings. Yeah.
That's the stimulus check thing is, I mean, so like, wow. And stimulus is such a great word for this, right? Like when we're specifically talking about porn.
They are doing more than the American government for sex workers.
But so then like, let's talk about this transition then, right? Like, I mean, this moment when we go back a year ago when a lot of you, I mean, cause okay. So Eliza, I understand like you made the transition, like, from being an escort to being online. Can you talk about that transition? What was that like?
It was really stressful because it's such a different form of sex work, and it like utilizes a bunch of different skills. Like content creation is exhausting. People expect so much all the time. And like being an independent escort is also exhausting, but I'd just gotten used to that and I'd figured it out for myself. And now I had to figure it out all over again for like digital space, while also under the stress of the pandemic and knowing that like as like a sex worker, had limited options and like limited supports from like I was lucky enough to be able to like qualify for CERB because I'm also like an artist full time, right? And so I made enough money to qualify for that. But a lot of people weren't. And so like, yeah, it's a completely different world. I'm still getting used to it.
Well, now, it's navigating that, but then, so let's say for like Vixen and Gwen who've already been on the online space, then what is it like to have this influx of people who came into the online space? And wait, I said Vixen and Gwen. Anna, were you in the online spaces before?
I was, yeah. I actually started I officially came out doing sex work in like fall 2019. I started in that summer, so I definitely was there right before the cusp, and I saw a lot of it happen afterwards.
Right. So yeah. So what was it like to see this influx? Like, how does that?
It was. For me personally, it was crazy because then there was more demand for me to be online live. People are lonely. People are at home by themselves. I make a lot of my money online. And even during this, like even with OnlyFans and my free cams, I've decided to also spend more time on Twitch and then grow my platform on there, and then have it also hit on OnlyFans as well. But it's totally true. There, when it started, there was like an influx of not only people buying, but also girls selling, people selling their content. So while yes, and I know for me and Gwen, we have been online for ages. Like we have the following that it was fantastic, but it was also like if I had just started, seeing so much more competition come out there too. And I'm sure Gwen can talk on this.
Yeah, it was really interesting. And almost like I even still, sometimes I just think to myself, I'm like, it's so weird that like like having an OnlyFans is now a mainstream thing, that like all of a sudden like there's these it's like these YouTubers and celebrities who are like utilizing the platform, but not just utilizing it, but being aware of it, and like using, like, anytime I watch like a YouTube video, like even if it's just something casually very unrelated to sex work, and people like if it's a vlog or something, people casually make, oh, you should start OnlyFans as a joke, or like when's the OnlyFans dropping underneath people's like hot selfies, which is like it's so weird. it's weird. It's like, because it just feels like very like that kind of is very removed from, I guess, like the stigma that like I'm used to about working like in this industry. And there definitely is and always has been like some glamour about like, ooh, you work in porn, super cool. But now it's like amplified, but then also diluted in a sense, because now everybody has an OnlyFans, so it's not as like special and like hip, but it's almost expected, which is odd. Yeah, it's been weird. I've been on OnlyFans for a while. I think since 2018, and I've always pushed like other sex workers to be like, oh shit, guys, there's this OnlyFans. It's great, subscription price, and blah blah. They're like, yeah, whatever, bitch. And then COVID started, and my emails, my DMs were getting flooded by just my friends being like, okay, I got to start a OnlyFans now. What can you help me out? Can you blah, blah, blah. And I seriously considered like, charging for this information consulting fee. Like it's time out of my day. But I'm like, you know what? COVID's already hard enough. If people want this information, that's fine. I've like set up like Zoom meetings for groups. I've walked people through it. I think right now it's such an easy way to become greedy in this COVID. You're so isolated. You think about yourself. But I think OnlyFans you're in touch with other people. And I think watching girls shout out other girls, there are OnlyFans chats and Telegram groups. So it's not even just like what we're getting from buyers, but what we're getting from each other is a community right now.
I remember one of the sources that I spoke to for this article that I did about how OnlyFans, like OnlyFans in the pandemic, what's changed for the like larger like online sex worker industry, and also for offline workers forced online. And I spoke to Gigi Holiday that does Sanctuary Noir, and Gigi had like so much really interesting insight. She's just like in general a really amazing person running this really awesome thing, which is why I have to plug it. It's this really great like BIPOC centered like online strip club. And Gigi made this really good point to me, which is like, before the pandemic, people like a lot of people that wouldn't have done an OnlyFans, when the pandemic started, they're exposed to this realization that like, oh, I don't want to trade sell sex this way. I don't want to do full service work, or I don't want to cam, but I can sell these pictures of myself with like my cleavage, or I can like sell feet pics, and like people are going to buy that. Like I don't have to do this kind of sex work, but I can totally do this kind of sex work because I don't have a job and I got laid off and I need to make money. And so it's complicated. And one that kind of boils down to is this issue of like internalized whorephobia and people that are starting to embrace OnlyFans and starting to do this, and they're kind of coming into our community and they're learning things that they're not always they don't really understand a lot of the complex issues of like what we call the hierarchy, and the ways that sex workers relate to each other and who gets like stigmatized and who doesn't, things like that. So while it's really complicated, it's also this sort of like it's simultaneously the stigma is being diluted a little bit, but it's also not, because it can also reinforce this idea like, I don't sell sex offline. Like I just sell feet pics, versus like this person over here is a full service sex worker. I would never do that, which is something that does happen with some of these newer girls that are getting into OnlyFans and stuff like that. Not all of them. Some of them really, really do pick up on like the politics of sex work, which is a really complicated thing in its own right that we could spend hours talking about. But it's really complicated. And I think it does simultaneously enforce some stigma stigmas while also destigmatizing it. Like shit, like I have friends, like as a trans sex worker, right? Like before I was a sex worker, almost like so many of the people that I knew that were trans feminine were doing sex work, because that's just the reality of being a trans woman, right? You do sex work. Like not everyone does it, but a lot do, and your friends are sex workers. And that was an experience that I had with my trans friends and not my cis friends, especially the cis women that I knew. And then suddenly was like that, like a mirror version of what I was experiencing with my trans feminine friends. Like all these cis women are like, I can do this now. I can, you know, I can go on OnlyFans. I can sell pictures too. And it was definitely really eye-opening in ways that, you know, is not like refreshing in some ways, not so much in others, but still it's definitely a change no matter what.
Yeah,
I'm excited about. Oh, go ahead, Gwen.
No, you speak.
I was just gonna say, I like Sanctuary Noir. Like, I love the rise of like virtual strip clubs, and I just feel like being able to like have spaces run like by and for dancers. Like I'm thinking about Strap House here too, is like it's removed so many barriers. Like no more, like there's no more like black quota, like walking into a club and being told we already have one of you, like put a wig on and call and just pretend you're something else. Like there's spaces where we can kind of come and like not pay massive club fees. We can like run our own shows. We don't police our own music. Like I think that like the rise of stuff like that has just been such a powerful thing. And I think just really gives us some of our, like gives us the ability to like have creative control over what we do. But I think also like in the same way we're talking about like some of the like Visa, MasterCard pulling out of PornHub, like all of this totally falling in line with like Instagram terms of service, like Zoom pulling out of like virtual clubs and canceling sex shows. Like it really is like an all out attack across these digital platforms. But I think it's just been so amazing because, you know, like while there's this influx of people coming through and this really great sort of like solidarity and like these like workshops on like how to run your OnlyFans or like how to pole dance and like twerk shops and stuff like that. I think I feel like virtual strip clubs have like completely changed the game and are a serious threat to like how strip clubs currently run by just giving dancers back the power, which is great.
Absolutely. Just a really like small thing to add on to that. It reminds me of something that, when I was doing that report that was about like OnlyFans compared to Sanctuary and also Sanctuary Noir, I realized how much like the queer strip club as it exists, because, you know, Sanctuary is like a queer strip club. Like the idea of having a queer run strip club is like so impossible in the offline world. And it's so hard to be like a queer stripper. And it's the same, there's parallels to that too, right? Like that ability to like have it be run and owned and for like the people that are dancing, right? Like that same identity. That's like super, really cool and really important. And also the culture that's around it too.
I feel like this conversation is really exciting. I think that I'm feeling a lot of like bitterness and sorrow, particularly for like full service sex workers, because like I think it's great that like every other person has like an OnlyFans now. But I think about like full service sex workers who need to continue doing full service and how that is really like frowned on even like within the industry. When it comes to like people who have to go work, like it's COVID, but people have to do that work. I wonder how like, I just feel like this is not liberating for full service sex workers. It doesn't help us at all. And it just kind of like continues to fuel that like whorephobia and that stigma that still like remains on us. Like the only reason I made an OnlyFans is because like I am high risk, so I can't go work, but I like desperately would rather do that and go back. And I feel like coming out of this pandemic, like for maybe things will be better for like online sex workers. Maybe things will be a little bit better for like dancers, but I don't see how it's going to be better for full service sex workers. That's just where my brain's at.
Interesting, because Gwen, I'll get back to what you were going to say earlier, but it's because I saw BuzzFeed said, when we're talking about this kind of almost gentrification of OnlyFans and the sex work world, where you have like people OnlyFans becoming part of the popular lexicon. I saw some a comment on BuzzFeed where they're saying that it's almost like it's what's the word? It's uplifting the perception of sex workers. And I mean, but what you're saying, Eliza, sounds like the opposite is true. It's creating, it sounds like it's amplifying the hierarchy, so to speak.
Like, I think it could definitely do both of those things. I think it's like the industry is so vast. There's so many different people in it doing so many different types of labor. And I think that, well, while it is becoming more acceptable and has been more acceptable to do these more distanced forms of sex work where you're not touching your clients or you're not actually like exchanging fluids, like that is continuing to be more acceptable, like the most acceptable form of sex work. I think about the fact that like over the pandemic, I like chose to show my face, and I chose to do that because I'm now only an online content creator. And like, can I go back safely to like full service now that my face is shown? Because you can find me on the internet. Like you can find my art on the internet. It's not hard. And so, yeah, I don't know.
No, that's, yeah, I completely agree with you. I feel like it's, yeah, just in terms of OnlyFans being popular and everybody being like, oh, I can just like join this, I can do this. I don't think a lot of those people like recognize like the spaces that they're coming into in terms of like Anna was saying, like knowing kind of like how, like, not that there's like a certain way that we all exist, but there's kind of like a mutual understanding within the communities of like, hey, we've already been through these shitty ideas about the like the way that we function amongst each other. And like, I don't think a lot of people like, because it's like all of a sudden, like there's a spotlight shown on, there's a spotlight upon us, upon our communities. And all of a sudden, like, because there's a flood of new people and they're like having these conversations that we've had like years and years and years ago that we've already kind of like come to understand in our own ways. And then, yeah, these people that think they can just jump on OnlyFans and make $1 million, when in reality, the average OnlyFans creator like makes like $150 US to $250 US a month, which is like, yeah, and that includes like people who are transitioning into like on this online stuff. And I think like it's almost like a slap in the face, in my opinion, for like all the, I guess, like the new folks to come in and expect to make bank. Even some of them who are making bank, and then just completely ignoring like the reality of the situation for like a lot of sex workers who like aren't achieving that like status, I guess, of online fame and fortune.
Kat, you want to pose your question publicly?
I mean, like, I just feel like then that opens a can of worms of just like, then we can talk about that for literally like hours about like safety and about like the cons of OnlyFans, right? Like that's a whole other issue.
I want to hear it.
Oh my God. Can anyone want to take this? Anyone happy to take this?
I would love to actually. This is something I deal with because I was a public figure first and I opened an OnlyFans. I do want to add really quickly though, just to reiterate that I think Eliza makes a great point that we often ignore or don't really care about full service workers. Especially like I see this all the time with fellow online workers, and it can be both political, like they don't understand things like full decriminalization of sex work, or it can be just things like talking over them. So I think it's really important to highlight that. And I think it's such a good point too, like navigating those dangers, like of being online, of being like a person who does sex work online. There's a certain level of privacy when you do offline work that's completely offline. It's not really like, maybe you do have like, say like a Tristat or so, but it's very different when you have like, when you have it plastered all over the place online, especially to really get people to check out like your OnlyFans, to check out your PornHub, your ManyVids, like the privacy repercussions of that for me have been severe. I've had to walk in when I started doing sex work and I started doing specifically like ManyVids videos, which is how I started before OnlyFans. I had to tell myself that there is going to be a point, and I started doing it, by the way, specifically because I had to pay the bills. Like I had moved into a new apartment and I like had no fucking money, and like I was like, well, I know this really well from covering it, so I'm gonna go do it. And when I started doing ManyVids videos, like I knew right away that this is going to affect my career forever as a journalist, and that this is going to affect my internet footprint forever. There are people that take my nude photos on, there's like a stalking forum that take my nude photos and plaster them on there specifically to make fun of me for no other reason, but because I'm a trans woman that sells sex. Like I sell sex online, right? Like that is the reason why they do it. It's because I am shooting porn and because I make money off of that. And that's the way that I make money. And it's really, really difficult to navigate the world knowing that because it affects civilian jobs. Like, because I make most of my income through journalism work, what ends up happening is when I don't hear back for interviews, which has happened, even though I'm overqualified, it's always in the back of my head, like, did I not hear back because they know that like I shop porn, right? Like, did I not hear back because they saw that I was on like Pink Label, and like suddenly it's like this trans woman does queer porn, like we're absolutely not hiring her, like this is so disgusting, and like you never really know. And so the online repercussions are severe. And I think that's something that people might not understand right away while they're stuck indoors. They don't actually have to go on interviews face to face, or they might not be interviewing because it's impossible for the field. Like things, they might walk out of the pandemic and realize that, while certain things have changed, a lot of things have not. And a lot of people keep keep their whorephobia to themselves, but it's very vicious and it affects their professional circumstances or just the people in their lives.
Yeah. Sorry, Elizabeth. It's quick. I mean, I just, we have to remember that like sex workers are still facing discrimination in square workplaces. We've seen several news stories about sex workers being outed, OnlyFans girls being outed at their workplaces and being fired. Okay, like we saw it with like that auto shop. I can't remember where it was in the States. We saw it with, what was it, like Taco Bell recently? Like this has been happening. It's like, it's not going to stop happening. So yeah, I think that part of this, like, we're in an era of like survival sex work that, like OnlyFans is survival sex work. People are doing it to survive. They need that extra $250 a month. That is making the difference in their lives. So when you're in survival mode, you don't have time to think about the stigma and how this might affect you in the long term and the discrimination that you're going to face. But undoubtedly, that is going to be something, I think in the wake of the pandemic, we're all going to have to reckon with the fact that we've got our naked bodies online and why that should not be a mark on our character. And it shouldn't be a reason that we can't work in other industries.
Yeah, it's something I worry about a lot because especially with the new people entering online sex work, I see a lot of people using like their legal names or like using like their like regular profiles to promote it, like their personal Instagram that's attached to all the people they went to school with. And it's like not knowing how dangerous that can be for you. Like I know somebody who like went to go like see a client and I'm like, did you screen? Like, did you tell anybody where you were going to go? Like, does anyone know where you're going to be? Like, that is so dangerous. And I don't think a lot of people know that. And exactly what you said, Andrea, like after the pandemic, after all of this, everything goes back to normal. Like there's going to have to face a lot of like whorephobia. Like being a sex worker can affect your ability to like adopt children, as if people don't know where children come from. It can affect your ability to travel to certain places, and it can affect your ability to get jobs. Like visibility is not like liberation. Like I think about people who are able to like engage in sex work but kind of like distance themselves from sex worker identity. So like the censoring on like the internet doesn't affect them because they have a high platform. I think of like Bella Thorne making sex work look cool and like being unaffected by anything that regular sex workers go through, and how that's like so misleading to like a lot of new people entering sex work because they need to survive and they can't think about the stigma, but like it will fuck them up.
Bella Thorne. Yeah, I was thinking, Anna, when you we're talking about how like, it's normal for trans femmes to get into sex work. And it's a conversation that takes place. But now all of a sudden, like cis women are like, oh yeah, now I'm on OnlyFans. And I was thinking like, oh, is it because Caroline Calloway like made an OnlyFans, like bougie fucking bullshit? Like, And yeah, all this like tourism, this like, civilian tourism into the sex industry, because it's taboo. Like, they're just going to put on, a sex worker outfit and try it on for the day. And then they get to take it off and they don't get to experience any of the stigma and long-term discrimination that we face. Fuck them.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it's so true. And I think it really does go back to, a lot of the things that Eliza was pointing out too, right? Like, these people that are new to the industry, these baby sex workers, like they don't know about screening clients. They don't have anyone in their social circles to teach them these things, right? In the ways that, like, when I was first starting out, right? Like, granted, I wasn't doing full service, I was doing online, but I was surrounded by like trans women that would like pop in and say like, hey, like you might want to do this through a service because then this handles the legal repercussions of doing this, or like, remember to sign this paperwork. Like, I remember my first shoot and it was like just having like the paperwork out with me with the consent forms. And I was like, I need to collect this information. And now like, I'm the person in that role, right? When I shot with someone recently over Zoom and I was like, you need to sign this, by the way, to cover both of our asses. And like, without that social circle, without that connection, and that was, by the way, if another trans femme, like we're, look out for our own, right? And so without that connection, without that social ability for someone to catch you or just be like, hey, like you text me and like I am here and you've got my number and like please do not hesitate to text me, check in with me. Like those basic 101 things are lost on these people. And it's like, you gotta like get money, that's great, but like you also need to like not put your life in danger, and you need to be aware that like this is not just get the cash and you're good. Like this is really dangerous and you could end up like, hurt or dead if you aren't careful. And so it really is like, it's really sad that like there's all these new sex workers that are not given that ability to have a community to catch them and teach them that.
Which is why it's so insidious that social media platforms are cracking down on sex workers right now, because communicating with each other on social media is how we keep each other safe. And like Twitter has been like a kind of promised land for a while, and we know it's not going to last. We know that people are already being deleted, shadow banned, etc. Like it's not safe. There is nowhere safe for us to be able to communicate that information to the most vulnerable of us. And that includes the baby sex workers.
Yeah, it really, I feel like now more than ever, like I'm just reminded of like how important having sex worker run organizations are. And I mean, like Eliza, everything you're saying about like full service sex work, I'm thinking about like the street outreach that Maggie's has done over the pandemic. And like, if anything, are like the amount of like safe sex supplies, like drug use supplies that we're handing out has actually increased by a lot throughout the pandemic. And it's like, thinking back like to when like Maggie's was founded, like a lot of that stuff was started and funded with like our own like sex working dollars to like buy the supplies, to do the routes and stuff like that. And I think maybe like one thing that I've found really useful through the years and like thinking about like how important screening is, right? Like making sure you have someone to check in with. Like everything I've ever learned about how to do my work safely, I've learned from other sex workers who have taken the time to like step up and show me. And so I kind of feel like for me, it sort of feels like whenever I do have like any type of like income or ability to like give back, it's like, it feels like it's so important because they're the only reason that I'm here. Right. And just like all of the people that we miss, like sex workers that are murdered, that go missing, that we like fight so hard for. In Toronto, like police violence is really bad. Like trying to like advocate for ourselves in those kinds of situations is just so awful. But it feels like now more than ever, it's important to have like a really solid network, like run by us for us. And so that's why I think about like the emergency aid funds that we've been running and trying to do like culturally specific emergency aid funds and programs and food boxes, because sex workers risk so much, even just like applying for CERB or like filing taxes or like being outed at any step in that process, right? Like you risk losing your housing and your kids and being outed in vanilla jobs. I'm a teacher, right? So it's like when students come up and have like my whole like industry background and stuff like that, is terrifying, right? And you can be completely let go. So I'm really thankful for like the buy-in for organizations that have just like stuck it out and continued to like challenge some of the bullshit that we deal with.
Yeah, I feel like it's been so important for so many people because institutions fail sex workers so much. And like I think like sex work is like a survival trade, and like so like the most vulnerable people in society are like engaged in sex work because they have been denied other forms of labor, like and it's really disappointing. But like the things like the mutual aid funds, like the stuff that Maggie's doing, like all that fundraising, all that community organizing has really been like the only thing that we've had. And like Andrea was saying about like Twitter, like it's going to disappear. It's like, where do we go to find each other and to help each other? Because like the institutions won't, like the government won't.
I mean, this has been an eye-opening conversation, and I'm so proud or like humbled to be able to stand back and listen to you all. And I think this is a great opportunity for you to kind of drop in and mention, where should people support? Where do people throw down their you know, like first of all, like let's start off with like, you know, supporting Maggie's. And Ellie, do you have certain kind of funds or charities you want, or like support funds you want people to contribute to?
Yeah, totally. So right now there's a Black sex worker emergency survival fund, and then we'll be sort of like reopening just like the general COVID support fund. So you can find that on our website at maggiesto.org/Black Lives Matter. And you can set up a recurring donation. I would love you to set up a recurring donation at maggiesto.org/donate. And all of that helps us do like emergency grants, like expand like food box programs. And that's really nice because we're able to just like, it's not just like one drop off of food, but like weekly food deliveries to people so that you like get fed, stay fed. And it also helps us like buy more supplies for street outreach through the pandemic too. So yeah, maggiesto.org/donate for all of that.
I actually am an organizer for a mutual aid project called Node Project. You can find us at, hold on, I always forget the URL. We are very new. You can find us at nodeproject.org or the Node Project NYC on Twitter and Instagram. And what we do is we crowdfund stipends, basically to receive and pay out stipend applications from marginalized folks for tech-based needs, things like phones, computers, help getting like webcams and stuff for sex workers. We actually get a lot of sex workers in part because we're in community with like Swap Brooklyn. I'm based in New York. Obviously, it's a kind of New York centered, but we take plenty of applicants from all around. Like it's so important, you know, that the financial, the ways that access to money is like dictated based on class, race, gender, and sex working status. Like it's all interlocked into what tech you can afford. And so like our goal is basically to just like let people in a no strings attached way get access to like the technology they need. And so if folks want to donate, we have donations open. We could really use some help right now just because we're going for our second round of stipend payouts to all sorts of folks really, really hit hard by COVID right now.
So yeah, let's tell everyone where they could follow you. Vixen, go, you start.
You can follow me at vixenvu.com. All my links are there. Pretty easy.
Okay. And Anna?
You can follow me at AC Valens at Twitter, and similar case here, it links out to a lot of my social media stuff.
Okay. Eliza?
You can follow me at Eliza Lord on Twitter. And you can find our podcast at twop_podcast. I don't know. It'll be in my profile.
Wait, the podcast is called, what is it?
Heart with a Heart.
Heart with a Heart. And so it's twat. Yeah. So, Gwen?
You can find me everywhere at gwenadora.com/links.
Okay. And Andrea?
I'm at Andrea Warehan on Twitter, and you can find other fun, salacious options over at andreawarehan.com.
Amazing. And I don't, Ellie, do you have somewhere you want people to follow, or just stick to the Maggie's?
Yeah, I mean, like Maggie's is great. So anything at Maggie's Toronto across socials. And then if you can follow the straphouse.ca for the Queer Black Virtual Club and come through. We have monthly shows, and we'll be doing a bunch of like fundraising for the Black Sex Worker Fund there. So anything at the straphouse.ca.
Amazing. And of course, you know, follow Now Toronto on YouTube and whatnot. Thank you all again so much for taking part in this conversation. I know it's always, you know, I really appreciate how much you're putting yourselves out there to have these kinds of conversations and to help the community and stuff. So I am absolutely humbled that you decided to let me listen in on this. So thank you again so much. And until next time.
Awesome.
All right.
Cool. Great.
That's great.
Everyone,
Thanks, Red.
amazing.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah.
Thanks everyone. That was informative.
Definitely. I learned something.